Well, it's worth noting on that quickly that there is a lot more volatility as you get into the upper markets. But well, I'll look for the sake of today. So I've broken it down into the sub 1 million as a market, the 1 to 1.5, then 1.5 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, and then 5 mil plus. So we'll go through those as just different market segments within Melbourne. But starting with the sub 1 million market, holistically, this market has just performed the best. Now, there is still a major disparity between houses in that sub 1 million and then apartments and units. And we could say that the house market has performed the best with bit of land, 3 bed, 2 bath. If it's sub a mil, has done quite well in Melbourne. To give you some insights as to some suburbs and how they've performed in some regions in general, the outer suburbs of Frankston, so in that sort of LGA, they've done about 20% growth so far this year. Some areas in Bendigo have done 22% growth in the last 12 months. Houses in Ballarat have experienced 11.8% growth in the last 12 months. And then some pockets of Geelong have experienced 14.5% growth in the last 12 months. Now, all of this data that I'm going to be sharing is from a combination of SQM and Stash and then CoreLogic as well. So these are
So yeah,
real
as an
numbers.
example, if you had a $600,000 property in Frankston, it's going to be circa 720 to 750. This is lagging data as well. Like when you're on the ground, they're probably more like high sevens, to be honest. Like a $600,000 property is going to be closer to 800. And the disparity and why people always go for houses. And this is my take on going beyond the data, and you have to go into the actual property type, the property set. So the way that they blanket the pricing and the growth is houses are very easy to define, right? Like single title, 3 bedroom, like it's a house on X square meters of land. Units are a mix of a whole bunch of things. Townhouses can get thrown in there. Unit complexes with 3 units on a block or 2 units on a block. And then you've got high rises. So you've got one of 500 all thrown in the same bucket as a unit, right? Like it's classed as a unit. And that's why it will look way worse. So I've spoken to a few well-known property data experts, and I've asked them, like, can you split that data out? And there is no way of doing it. Like it's very hard to define that. So again, when you're looking at these, you have to go beyond what is the next step, because if you just dismiss units, you could miss out.
For sure. And yeah, sometimes the data is just rubbish because you can't break it down any further. Though I'll try.
Yeah.
So to obviously in that sub 1 million, houses have performed better than units across the board. But still, what we can do is we can look at some particular suburbs and we can look at some particular configurations and then look at the data from there. So as an example, in South Yarra, the 2 bedroom unit market, which is mostly going to be 2 bedroom apartments, there's pretty much no units in there that are 2 bedroom, like even townhouses. So the 2 bedroom apartment market in South Yarra has done 9.5% growth in the last 12 months. So that's a pretty strong result because that also would include high rises. And I can tell you that the high rises probably have not done the 9.5%, but some of those, because there's a lot of the walk up flat, 10 to 15 in a complex in South Yarra that are the brick, double brick, sort of 60s, 70s, 80s blocks. And we've seen some of those have performed quite well. So that market has done 9.5%. But if you looked at the entire unit market, which includes the 1 bedders, the studios, and the 3 bedroom apartments, they've performed a lot weaker and done 3.9% over the 12 months. Huge disparity in there. And the studios probably bring that down a little bit as well, but big differences. And then even looking at Camberwell units have done 12.5% in the last 12 months. And that was with a median sale price of the high eights or the low nines, I believe, from memory.
Yeah, and there's going to be not too many apartments. There's definitely apartments in
Correct.
Camberwell, but not that many. So
Way more villa
these,
units.
what's that? Sorry?
Way more villa units.
100%. And the walk up stuff. When we say walk up, it doesn't have a lift. You can just imagine like a flat, like that's probably what they're better known as, like a flat, 3 stories. Yeah, not much going on. But that just shows you, again, I think that's pretty good from South Yarra. There's a lot of young professionals that want to be in South Yarra, and like Rockley Road. And what's the other one? Is it like Kingston or Kingston? Yeah, those streets, they've got some really nice builds going on, like duplexes, some 8, 9, $10 million homes on there. And yeah, some of these apartments that I think they're just a gold mine. Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could probably keep breaking down the sub 1 mil market forever, but in the spirit of time, I'll jump into the 1 to 1.5 mil range because we buy a lot for clients in this 1 to 1.5 mil range. And across the board, we've seen that this market has performed pretty strongly for this year. Interesting. So Cotality or CoreLogic has stated that in Melbourne, the middle market between that 1 to 1.5 mil range has performed the strongest over the last 3 months. They've said that there's been 2.2% growth in the quarter compared to 1.7% in the sub 1.1 to 1.5 mil band, and then 0.9% in the upper markets, respectively. So I find that quite interesting. I think that's probably just like a bit of the lag in the data as well, because I'd say it's quite obvious that the sub 1 million has performed stronger across the board, though maybe they're including units and other things as well, which is why sometimes looking at those big slabs of data where they just say median price in Melbourne is not the best way to look at things. But looking at houses in the 1 to 1.5 mil range, we've bought 2-bedroom sort of Victorian terraces in Prahran and like houses in even like a Vermont South, and then areas like Hyatt and Brighton, and the 1 to 1.5 mil range has done very well. For some stats here as well, Hyatt has done 10.4% in the last 12 months. Prahran's done 13.5% in the last 12 months.
Yeah, wow, that's good
for this price point. So they're pretty big numbers for there. And I think we were feeling it. We bought an off market in Prahran, and some of the properties on that street had 30, 40 groups through in the first week. I remember at the time it was very busy in those areas. So I think
so how did you get access to this off market if it was so hot in there?
So I got 3 off markets on the one street over the time we were looking with for this client. I've got really good relationships with a lot of the agents in there, and we had a very specific brief for a client. So we weren't just like looking in 5 or 6 different suburbs. We're looking across 3 or 4 streets. And again, we get so many more off markets because we work with the agents to help build the agent's business as well. So for this particular case, like they were chatting with the vendor and we were able to help get them through the door by saying that had strong interest and had made an offer on another property on the street. So that was how we got in, and then the agent won the listing and then sold it to us off market straight away.
Very interesting. There you go.
Still happening. Yeah.
And then 1.5 to 2 mil, I think we were talking about this offline in terms of renovated versus the renovated. Sorry, did I say that right? Unrenovated versus renovated. I said the same word twice. Yeah. Just this narrative continues where people are very scared to complete any of their own renovations, any of their own builds. Like they'd just rather buy a turnkey. And when you're comparing the two, like I spoke to some people the other day about this, not so much renovated, but new properties. So you would look at something as a house and land package and it would be $1 million, or you could go and buy something that's already done for 950. Like it's crazy at the moment, the way that the construction industry is going. But I know you've had some conversations on this as well.
So this is the main and key theme that is what is going to divide the markets between the 1.5 mil plus. So this is the key theme that we're seeing in the 1.5 to 2 mil range, the 2 to 3 mil range, the 3 to 5, and the 5 mil plus. It's all the same conversation at this level. And that conversation is essentially the difference between the renovated and unrenovated stock. So we've had multiple conversations with multiple different clients in the last few weeks even that have said that they've got a property and they're on the fence about if they should do a major renovation or just try to find a new build that's already done and completed. And the conversations are like, we've got some quotes, we've spoke to a few builders, don't want to do this anymore. Like it's actually going to be cheaper and reduce the risk.
I'm in the same boat. I'm building
boat,
at the moment, and man, like we got a third call today that some prick has dumped rubbish on the property. Like,
oh my God.
I look at it and I know it's the cost of doing these things and it's the cost of construction and all that kind of stuff, but man, it is frustrating. So that's just like one element of it. And then like we had a conversation, sorry to like break in here. I'm just like having a therapy session with you, but just the way that councils operate and all that fun stuff. So it's just like this back and forth, and then you get all happy about it. And then you just get the balloon popped on you. It's like emotions just flowing up and down through the process. So if someone has been through it, like me, I'm right in the middle of it. If you were to ask me to build a year after we've completed this construction, I'm probably saying no. So yeah,
Mm.
if there's others in that boat, I totally get it. I know
And
I only got the call like 45 minutes ago, but
oh, no.
in terms of me as a person, I know as soon as I get through this, I'll probably want to build again. But
Probably,
yes,
yeah. The thing is, I think what's changed as well, and you know this better than I, mate, but I think what's changed is that I feel like there used to be, like, if we're talking like pre-COVID, there used to be margins where if you were to take the risk and you were to build, you were at least seeing profit on the other end, where like above build prices, it was looking like it was going to be like a good exercise financially, whereas sometimes that's less questionable now,
if
whereas
we
you
didn't
could be
buy
going
well,
through all this.
yeah,
Yeah,
if we
literally.
didn't buy, we would be screwed. Like honestly, it was only because we bought well.
Mm,
And that is the dialogue that I'm hearing with a lot of developers. I spoke to a developer last week and I was telling him we bought well in this development and he was just like, "Yeah, that's where I've made my money. Anything that I'm holding at the moment is literally the only reason that I'm making money is because I bought it correctly. Like I bought it at the right price."
yeah.
Because you're not
And
making money out of the construction. Yeah, it's a bit sad.
it's just the market we're in. And if you're looking at this and thinking like, how much stress am I going to go through for reno? And am I even going to be able to live there? Some of the conversations I'm having with people is that I'm not even going to be able to live here if I'm doing this, either build or huge reno. So I'm going to have to go find somewhere to rent whilst we rip out all the kitchens and bathrooms and plumbing and do the floors. And if you're doing all of that and all of that additional stress to break even, and I think that's what a lot of people are seeing at the moment, that it's like you might be breaking even, then all of a sudden it's all right, let's have a look at trying to, let's see if we can just find something that's in a finished condition already.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what we're seeing. The 1.5 to 2 mil range, I think for good properties in that level, and we bought in like Glen Waverley and Vermont South, like they're probably done 100 to 180 grand at those price points, the sub 2 mil. But yeah, again, when you're over the 2 mil mark, that's where the disparities in performance are increasing the most. And at this level, we're seeing properties that are underquoted at auction and well renovated are doing really well still. There was a big result that happened. There was actually multiple big results that happened over the last weekend where they were selling 400 grand above the top of the range, but it was like still solid prices at like the upper levels of what prices have ever been in those suburbs for those sort of property types. But if there is some compromise factors, we're seeing a lot more pass-ins above 2 mil. And the compromise factors is essentially like they could be anything to do with the master doesn't have the proper walk-in and ensuite set up yet. It's
Yeah.
just like a bigger master, or your lack of car accommodation. Maybe there's a carport, or it's not like a double lock-up garage, or sometimes there's just no car accommodation at all. Could be it's a south-facing block. It could be just the less ideal facade type for the area, slightly compromised location. We've seen some that have really struggled in the last few weeks that are just near a school or near commercial or close to a main road, or a bit of the property backs onto a main road, or it's a south facing block, or it's a smaller than average block in the neighborhood. Now, like any one of those things is not going to hurt a property. If there's a couple of them, then it can hurt the property and you would just be looking at a different price point. But it's if you've got like a few of those features, we're seeing that these property types are just struggling a lot more than standard. And if people are going into it with based on the conversation we've just had with looking at the renovation and the build costs, if people are going into it knowing that they're going to have to buy something, pay all the stamp duty and pay everything else, and then have to renovate it upon moving in, that's when some of them are just hurting. And recently over October and November, we've seen multiple pass-ins that at this level, especially with conversations. And the other thing that is really important to do with this conversation at these price points, especially up to the 3 to 5 mil range as well, is that agents are having to do a lot more educating to vendors about the cost of construction renovation. If they've been living there for 10 or 15 years in their homes, and we're going through this at the moment in the negotiation right now, the vendors have been seeing some of the big results of fully done properties that are beautifully landscaped, fully renovated, great floor plans, and they're still hitting like these suburb records. And then they're looking at their property that's not renovated, that doesn't have the right floor plan, that doesn't have the landscaping. It's not even tidy. Like that, it's just a well loved and lived in family home that's in more original condition. They're looking at something that sells for 2.8, 3, 3.2, 3.5, and then just saying, oh, knock 100 grand off because mine's not renovated to their standard. But it's like the agents are now having to have these conversations where it's not 100 grand. We're looking at 600 grand for the same thing. And we're doing this at the moment where someone's had just the back knocked off and done like a slightly larger extension. The extension wasn't brand new. It was probably done 10 or 15 years ago, but it had completely rearranged the home to have the big open plan kitchen, living, dining at the rear, opening up onto the garden where their home didn't have that. And the vendor was thinking, yeah, 150 to do that. Nah, you're getting close to 800 grand to do big changes like that, where you're ripping the back off and completely redoing everything. Like 800 grand would probably be a conservative value.
Yeah.
And they just don't believe it.
Yeah. Prices have just gone through the roof. Like 40% they've said since COVID increase. So yeah, if you thought a bathroom renovation was going to cost you 50, forget about it. It's definitely not costing that these days. But mate, I know we're probably getting close to time today. Was there anything else on that stuff?
That's the biggest differences that we've seen across the market. And essentially, even the prestige market, the 5 mil plus, there is some really good results that are happening, but there's also a lot more stock on market at that level. And we've been speaking with agents in that 20 mil price point, and there's heaps of off markets in there as well at the moment.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of vendors that are on the fence about selling. And again, with the renovation costs, a lot of them are trying to buy the finished products as opposed to doing the full renos themselves.
Yeah.
So and that's the market wrap.
Yeah. And to be honest, this is a weekly occurrence. Like how's the market was created was because I always had something to talk about around real estate. You know what I mean? Like there was every single week was different. And when you're speaking to agents, it can change from Monday to Thursday. Like you'll have conversation with agents saying, hey, is there anything coming up in this price point? No, absolutely nothing. Haven't spoken to anyone. And then come Thursday, they've got 5 properties that meet that brief. Things move so fast, and I've never seen. It's why I've probably found the industry so interesting, and why I've stayed in it for so long is because it changes every single week. There's always something new. And it's just why this podcast, especially those that live in the east of Melbourne, and yeah, probably that is our focus, Borondara, Stonington, Port Phillip, like we talk about all of those areas. It's just why it is extremely relevant. So good stuff, man.
That's it. Thanks for tuning in to How's the Market. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave a quick review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps more people find the show. And for more tips, tools, and real talk in the property market in Melbourne, head to www.tommy.com.au and you can join the mailing list. Until next week, we'll catch you guys then.
See ya.